Welcome to the Mind Spark, bringing you the latest news from around the world. The news hit Alaska like a blizzard, sudden, overwhelming, and impossible to ignore. It was shocking and relentless, spreading through every community like a chill that wouldn't fade. On a frigid Monday morning, the Canadian government made a stunning announcement: the immediate closure of the Alaska Highway. The main land route connecting Alaska to the rest of the U.S. was sealed. No trucks, no cars, no passage. The road that had always been open, no matter the weather, was suddenly off limits. Concrete barriers and armed officers blocked the border crossings at Beaver Creek and Little Gold, enforcing the closure with a visible show of force. For Alaskans, it was as if the world had shifted overnight. The familiar sense of remoteness became something far more frightening. Panic spread instantly. Grocery stores were stripped bare, gas stations saw endless lines, and people rushed to stock up on whatever they could find. The Alaska Highway is more than a road. It's Alaska's lifeline for food, fuel, and medicine. Every supply, every delivery, every connection depended on it. Without it, Alaska became an island, cut off except by costly air or slow sea routes. The sense of isolation was immediate and profound. On the Canadian side, chaos reigned. Tourists, families, and truckers were stranded in small towns, motels filled, and people slept in their cars, uncertain when they could move on. The Canadian government offered no answers, only that the closure was indefinite. No timeline, no explanation, just uncertainty. Confusion and anger grew. How could a friendly neighbor do this? The sense of betrayal was palpable, and tempers flared at the border. Truck drivers faced ruin as perishable goods sat in idle rigs, their livelihoods and cargo both at risk. One driver, hauling produce, summed it up: "Everything in this truck is gonna rot. Who pays for this?" His words captured the desperation of many. His frustration echoed across communities on both sides of the border. People gathered to share news, rumors, and fears, searching for answers. The longest undefended border in the world had become a wall. No one knew when or if it would come down. The uncertainty was as heavy as the snow. The sense of betrayal was immediate and deep. Families watched the news in disbelief, struggling to process what had happened. Alaskans felt abandoned, their connection to the outside world severed. The map that once promised freedom now showed only barriers. The closure was more than an inconvenience, it was a crisis. Emergency supplies were handed out, but no one knew how long they would last. The world watched as Alaska faced isolation not seen in generations. News outlets everywhere speculated on the reasons and the consequences. The question on everyone's mind: what could possibly justify such a drastic move? Theories and rumors swirled, but no one had real answers. The answer, when it came, would only deepen the divide, leaving scars that might never fully heal. The world demanded answers, as the abrupt decision left many in shock and confusion. Why would Canada close the highway so abruptly, without any prior notice or consultation? Ottawa's official reason was an environmental catastrophe, a claim that raised eyebrows. The Prime Minister claimed that decades of relentless truck traffic and the impacts of climate change had created an ecological emergency along the route, necessitating immediate action. He insisted it was not a political move, but a sovereign duty to protect Canada's land and natural resources. A joint commission was proposed to address the issue, but no timeline for reopening was given, leaving many in limbo. The explanation was met with skepticism in the U.S. and even among Canadians who questioned the true motives. Critics pointed to the lack of warning or phased plan. Why the sudden closure without any prior discussion? Many suspected a political motive, perhaps retaliation for trade disputes, or a bid for leverage in ongoing negotiations. The environmental argument felt like a convenient excuse for economic pain, affecting livelihoods and communities. The sense of betrayal deepened. For decades, the highway symbolized U.S. Canada partnership and cooperation. To close it so abruptly felt like a violation of trust, leaving travelers stranded and families separated. A senior U.S. diplomat said, "You don't treat a friend this way. You negotiate. You don't just build a wall overnight without dialogue." Ottawa's justification only fueled the fire, intensifying the public outcry and media frenzy. Tensions were rising fast, and the crisis was about to escalate into a larger diplomatic conflict. The world braced for what would come next, as the situation remained volatile and unpredictable. The impact in Alaska was immediate and devastating. Within 2 days, grocery shelves were empty. Milk, eggs, bread, all gone. Panic buying had stripped stores bare, and families faced empty refrigerators. Alaska's food supply chain, reliant on the highway, was broken. Small businesses suffered, construction halted, repair shops ran out of parts, restaurants closed. The economic ripple threatened to paralyze the state. Travelers were stranded on both sides of the border, their lives upended. An elderly couple from Arizona, stuck in a motel, ran low on medication and money. A young family moving to Alaska was trapped in British Columbia, their dreams on hold. Fuel became critical, gas stations rationed, prices soared, and fear of running out grew. In Alaska, running out of fuel isn't just inconvenient, it's life or death. People worried about heating homes and powering generators. The closure was no longer just a headline, it was a personal crisis for every Alaskan. The state's isolation, always present, had become a harsh reality. The sense of helplessness was overwhelming. The world's attention turned to Alaska's struggle for survival. The White House erupted. President Trump's response was immediate and explosive. He took to social media. "Canada has closed the Alaska Highway. A disgrace. There will be consequences." At a press conference, Trump called Canada's environmental excuse a total lie and a trade attack. He announced a 25% tariff on Canadian cars and 10% on lumber and aluminum if the highway wasn't reopened in 72 hours. Trump framed the crisis as a test of American power and a personal insult. "We built that road, and they think they can just close it? Not going to happen." His supporters cheered the tough stance, while diplomats were stunned by the speed of escalation. The 72-hour ultimatum left little room for negotiation. Trump's fiery rhetoric turned a regional crisis into a major international confrontation. The world watched as the clock ticked down. The chance for a peaceful resolution seemed to slip away. The stakes had never been higher. To grasp the crisis, you must understand the Alaska Highway's legacy. Built during World War II, it was a lifeline to defend Alaska from invasion. In 1942, U.S. soldiers carved a 500-mile road through wilderness in just 8 months. The Alcan became the artery for Alaska's growth, bringing families, building cities, fueling dreams. For generations, it symbolized U.S. Canada cooperation and shared purpose. Its closure felt like a betrayal of that legacy. Alaskans saw it as an insult to their history and identity. The road was more than infrastructure, it was a bond between nations. Shutting it down turned unity into division. The pain ran deeper than lost supplies. It cut to the heart of the U.S. Canada relationship. The closure was a wound to a partnership built over decades. The question now, could that trust ever be restored? Trump's 72-hour deadline passed. The highway stayed closed. Tariffs hit 25% on Canadian cars, 10% on lumber and aluminum. The North American auto industry reeled. Assembly lines halted, jobs at risk. Canada retaliated with tariffs on U.S. goods, agriculture, bourbon, consumer products. The trade war was on, and global markets tumbled. Legal battles erupted at the World Trade Organization. Allies were forced to pick sides as trust between the U.S. and Canada shattered. Protests and blockades spread at other border crossings. Leaders traded accusations. Trump called it backstabbing. Canada spoke of sovereignty. The feud grew more bitter and dangerous by the day. Two friendly neighbors were now locked in a damaging standoff. The world watched, anxious for what might come next. Beyond politics, Alaskans bore the brunt of the crisis. The impact was felt in every corner of the state, touching lives in ways that statistics could never fully capture. Sarah, a nurse in Fairbanks, faced dwindling supplies. "We're running low on everything. Flying things in isn't enough." She watched as her patients grew anxious and her colleagues grew weary, knowing help was far away. The Miller family's dream home was on hold, their lumber stuck in the Yukon, savings tied up, future uncertain. Each day they wondered if their plans would ever move forward, or if their investment would be lost. In talk, the local diner, gas station, and motel sat empty. The heart of the town seemed to stop beating, as regulars disappeared and silence replaced laughter. Maria, the diner owner, had to lay off her entire staff. She worried about their families and about her own future, as bills piled up and hope dwindled. "The highway is our lifeblood. Without it, this town will die." The words echoed through empty streets, a warning and a plea. Even the toughest Alaskans struggled. The challenges were relentless, testing the limits of endurance and spirit. John, a veteran musher, couldn't get dog food for his sled team. The bond with his dogs was deep, and the shortage cut to the core of his way of life. "I can hunt for myself, but my dogs are my family. Prices have tripled, and I can't find what I need." His voice trembled with worry, knowing his team depended on him. The sense of abandonment was everywhere. Neighbors checked on each other, but uncertainty hung in the air. These stories revealed the deep, painful impact of the standoff. Every family, every business, every community felt the strain. Communities that had weathered earthquakes and harsh winters now faced a crisis unlike any before. The familiar resilience was tested in new, unexpected ways. The closure tested the resilience of every Alaskan. People leaned on each other, sharing what little they had left. The human cost was mounting and hope was fading. Each day without relief deepened the wounds. The world saw not just a political dispute, but real people in real pain. Their struggles became headlines, but the suffering was personal and profound. The need for resolution had never been more urgent. Communities demanded answers and leaders felt the pressure to act. Alaska's spirit was strong, but even the strongest were reaching their breaking point. The crisis pushed everyone to their limits. The crisis demanded an end. Alaskans waited, hoping for the day when life could begin to return to normal. As costs soared, pressure mounted for a solution. Secret negotiations began, away from the cameras. After weeks of tense talks, a deal was struck. Canada would reopen the highway, the U.S. would lift tariffs. Both nations agreed to a joint task force to assess the highway's environmental impact and modernize it sustainably. The compromise let both leaders claim victory: environmental protection for Canada, a reopened road for the U.S. relief-swept Alaska as trucks rolled in, shelves refilled and gas prices dropped. The crisis was over, but the scars remain. Trust between the U.S. and Canada was badly damaged. Rebuilding that trust would take years. The reopening was just the first step on a long road to recovery. The two nations had to learn to be neighbors again. The crisis was a stark reminder: even the strongest friendships can be tested. A shared border is no guarantee of a shared future.